Pokémon Champions has had one of the worst launches for a new Pokemon game in the franchise's history. And it's not surprising, as the same developers that made this game also made Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. We have veterans in the competitive Pokemon scene that are just extremely sad about this. Shofu here saying Pokemon Champions is very underwhelming because of the massive limitations of game modes, Pokemon items, and even attacks. Pokemon Showdown is vastly superior. I can use what I want there, which is true. This game only has 186 Pokemon in a Pokemon Champions here, and they're all Pokemon that are fully evolved. And because of the fact that the item pool is very limited, one of the things that we don't have is the Eviolite, so we can't even get Pokemon like Clefairy, Dusclops, Chansey, Porygon 2, so on and so forth, and it makes it to where there's less variety when it comes to the teams that you can use in this game. Now, to play devil's advocate though, this usually does happen when a new Pokemon game gets released. I remember during the Sun and Moon era, there was a very limited pool of Pokemon you could use because of the fact that the format didn't have the national dex, so they made it to where Pokemon that you could use in Sun and Moon were only limited into those games, and you couldn't really transfer any Pokemon from previous generations to use in competitive battling. So usually when a new VGC year launches for any new Pokemon game, on average it is very bare bones, so where you cannot have everything. So no crazy legendaries, no crazy, pools of Pokemon, so on and so forth. So I'm not going to diss Pokemon Champions now on the pool of 186 Pokemon, just for the fact that it usually starts like this in any Pokemon game, and I'm surprised people are not mentioning that. What I will criticize the game though is the lack of items that you have available to give to your Pokemon. So in order to get items into this game, you have to go to the shop, you have to go over to Frontier Shop here, and as you can see, the variety of items are very lackluster. It's just pretty much the bare bone basics. So you have all the different items that will boost the respective moves. So if you wanted to make your ground type attacks more better, you can get the Soft Sand for 20%. You guys all know these. We use them a lot in the regular Pokemon games just for our single player runs. And if we scroll down here, we also have a bunch of other items too. We have the Shell Bell, which is neat, and we also have a bunch of different berries. The only useful one here is just going to be the Chesto Berry. You get the Citrus and Lumberry for free, which I'll show you guys later. But yeah, all these berries for the most part are pretty useless. I don't know how Oranberry made the cut when Rocky Helmet is not even in this game. And the worst part is Rocky Helmet is literally advertised in the Frontier Shop. So I don't know why it's such a lack of items right now in the competitive format. Obviously, they're going to update this game as it's a free-to-play mobile game, and a lot of games like these need to have continuous updates to keep fans excited to keep them playing the game. But I think it is still really disappointing that the lack of items in this is really going to affect things, because if anything, they could just make new items specifically for Pokemon Champions to switch up things competitively instead of just not releasing all the items that we would want in competitive Pokemon. But yeah, as we keep scrolling down here, the only other things that are useful is the super effective berries. So if you have a certain Pokemon that you want to make sure it eats up a hit from a very powerful move, so for example, instead of having Focus Sash and Pelipper for some reason, you might want to give it a berry that will make it to where it won't deal as much damage against electric type moves, the Walk-In Berry. So at least you're gonna have these berries, which is good. But other than that, everything else in the shop here is like just near useless. It's really bad. Yeah, and we have Light Ball. The only thing you should be buying is just the Mental Herb when it comes to helping out with certain abilities. And then even though the pool of items are really lackluster, on the bright side though, the items that the game does give you are really good items off rip. So this is good for free-to-play players. So you get the Choice Scarf for free, get the White Herb for free. You're going to be able to get the Focus Sash for free. You're going to be able to get Leftovers, Lumberry, and Citrus Berry for free, which is really nice. So at least you get these items that are really good for competitive. So at least we have some variety of some good stuff we can use in competitive that are very common. When it comes to Mega Stones, you also able to get these Mega Stones for free, except for the Kalos starters, only if you don't have Legend ZA. So if you don't own Legend ZA, you're going to be unable to get the Kalos starters Mega Stones. So no Greninja, Delphox, or Chestnut getting Mega Evolved. But when it comes to the rest of the stones here, you can buy them for 2,000 VP in the shop. So you can get all these stones for free, but you do got to save your VP for those. And then we have the Bright Powder, Quick Claw, and King's Rock. And that's kind of it when it comes to items that you can get in a Pokemon Champions. This means that we are also missing items like Choice Span, Choice Scarf, Life Orb, Rocky Helmet, like I mentioned earlier, and so much and so forth. Yeah, and Assault Vest too. We're all missing those items that would really make competitive Pokemon competitive. And it really makes it for competitive battlers that have been playing these games for years and years and years. This game just feels so lackluster and incomplete because those items are not in the game. And yes, I know that Pokemon is a children's game, but Pokemon Champions was designed for the top tier competitive battlers so that they can take away competitive battling away from the original Pokemon series and make it to where you can lock in for champions and be able to play to your heart's content. So the fact that there's less options here really makes it not as fun for competitive battlers. But on the flip side of things though, what is nice about a limited format is for casual players like myself, they're going to be able to get into competitive Pokemon a little bit easier because the barrier to entry for competitive Pokemon wasn't as bad thanks to games like Scarlet and Violet, and even ZA to a certain degree. If you wanted to transfer your Pokemon from ZA into Home, into Champions, those Pokemon can actually get set up really quickly for competitive battling thanks to the amount of resources you can get to make the EVs really good, to make the different moves you can get easy to obtain. It was there, but the barrier entry sucked because of the fact that you did need to beat those games in order to be able to get access to all of those moves, items to be able to get the EVs and IVs all set up. So it was still a barrier to entry, even though it wasn't as bad anymore. What's nice about Pokemon Champions, though, is that the barrier to entry is not really there. So in the case where you own Pokemon Go, you can transfer Pokemon from Go into Home into Champions in order to set them up in Champions, as there is a menu in this game to where you can adjust the stats of your Pokemon on the fly. So if we go to train and we go to Pokemon training and we just take any of these Pokemon that I have right here and we can adjust their stats really quick here. So all my Pokemon in this game are currently maxed out on stats, but in the case where you transfer the Pokemon from Scarlet and Violet, ZA, or Pokemon Go into these games and you never set them up with any stats, you can go click on here and you can go adjust your stats on the fly. So you can click on attack here. For some reason, maybe if I want to do a special attacking Totemaru, don't do this. This is a really bad idea. But if you wanted to, you can go make it to where it has, you know, no attack anymore, no defense anymore. So maybe you can increase the special attack immediately to max. You can increase its speed to max if you want to. And all you got to do is use VP or a training ticket to automatically adjust it. So as you can see on the bottom of the screen right here, it has 320 VP for stat changes. For each individual move change, it's going to take 250 VP to change. And I can also change its ability to anything else I would want to do 1,000 VP in the game. You can also use training tickets to instantly do all this stuff for free. So you can save your VP for drip, for recruiting Pokemon, and so on and so forth here. So what makes this really nice is that if you play the game itself and get VP, get training tickets, so on and so forth, the barrier entry to get competitively viable Pokemon will make it to where it's not as hard, because you can also recruit Pokemon too for free in Pokemon Champions. So we can go back out of here real quick and we can go into recruit. So even if you don't have Pokemon Go, even if you don't have ZA or Scarlet, you can go recruit Pokemon here. You can recruit a Pokemon for free daily, or you can use quick coupons here to do a gotcha spin and be able to get Pokemon. Do I recommend doing this? No, but on the bright side though, it gives you a pool of multiple different Pokemon that you can recruit for that are going to have max stats off rip, and you can change them in the train mode to get what you want. So as you can see right here, we have about 10 different Pokemon that we can choose here that are all competitively viable. The most that you're going to need to change is a move or two or the stats, unfortunately, but other than that though, it's going to have maxed out stats, and it usually has a nature that will combo well with it too, which is really nice. So in this case, I do not have a Basculodon because I haven't played through the entirety of Pokemon Legends ZA. So I'm actually going to scoop this guy up compared to everybody else, just for the fact that this will be a good Pokemon for me that's easy to transfer. So we can do a trial recruitment, so we can hold it for 7 days. We have a permanent recruitment, so you can use 2,500 VP, or you can use permanent recruitment by getting tickets right here. Now, the option for these tickets, you're going to get them when you play this game as it's a welcome bonus, but these tickets usually don't exist all the time. So unless you buy the starter pack, unless you get through the battle pass, these tickets are not going to be here a lot. So you're going to probably have to use VP in order to get permanent recruitments, but it's still an option that'll be easy to do to make the barrier entry not as bad for Pokemon. So as you can see, we can use this ticket right here, and now we got Basculon permanently on my team, which is really nice. Now, the downside here when it comes to this system is, again, for anybody that's free to play that doesn't want to spend a dime on the starter pack, does not want to spend a dime on the battle pass, it's going to be very limiting because you only have 30 Pokemon available in Pokemon Champions in your box, and the only way to increase that box limit is either if you buy a subscription to Pokemon Home to transfer Pokemon from Champions into Home, or buy box space in Champions by buying the starter pack for $7 to increase your box space to 80, or do the $5 subscription to be able to get 1,000 plus more Pokemon in your PC box when doing it by the subscription method, which again is extremely horrible that they expect us to have a $5 subscription, $50 a year in order to just store 1,000 plus Pokemon to keep recruiting. Editor's note here, one other thing that's horrible about the Pokemon Home boxes and Pokemon Champion boxes, whenever you send a Pokemon from Home into Champions, it counts as a visiting Pokemon. And what's crazy about visiting Pokemon is that it does take up slots in both games. As you can see on the screenshot right here, I have about 10 Pokemon visiting from Home into Champions, and as you can see, they're all grayed out in Champions. Then if I go into Pokemon Champions, I see every single box slot also fill up with those same Pokemon. So no matter what, you need a subscription for both Home and Champions if you want to have extra box slots. So for anybody that is playing this game that is strictly free to play, please play Pokemon Go and evolve your Pokemon in Pokemon Go, because you can transfer Pokemon from Pokemon Go into these games, and you're going to be able to skip by a lot of the Pokemon that you do need by being able to just use Pokemon Go instead. In the case where you do not have a Nintendo Switch and you don't have Pokemon ZA or Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now, for all of you guys that do want to play this game on mobile, it's not out on mobile yet. That'll be coming out in June. But for all the guys that are going to be free to play only that don't have a Switch, these are going to be some of the strats you're going to want to do in order to be able to hang competitively in Pokemon Champions. Because once you get your team of 6 Pokemon by using recruiting, transferring Pokemon from Go, Scarlet, and ZA, it is really easy to set up a competitive Pokemon team in this game thanks to the VP that it gives to you, because it gives you about like 40,000 VP just off rip. You get 20,000 off rip in the game, you get another 20,000 just by simply playing the game, and then you also get a lot of VP every single time you go through a game. So in the beginning of this game, you can build a team really quickly. What's going to suck though is that if you play this game for a long time and you don't have any of the previous Pokemon games to transfer Pokemon into these games, it's going to be tougher to be able to keep up with the competitive format, because VP, I can tell, is not going to be as plentiful as the game goes on. And this happens a lot for a lot of free-to-play mobile games, to where at the beginning it is just so free, you get so many really good Pokemon all the time. But then later on, as the game keeps progressing, since the VP pool is going to be very limited, and they might change how moves work, they might change how what items you can get for your team from the shop, for what things you can buy, it's going to make it to where it's going to be really difficult to be able to keep up with the meta, because you only get about 300 VP per battle, and some of these items that you're going to be buying in the game are going to cost multiple thousands of VP in order to train your Pokemon, get items, and so on and so forth. So right now it's easy to build a team, but at the same time, you still got to do tricks in order to build a competitive team, compared to something like Pokemon Showdown, to where you can just automatically set up your teams as you go, and Showdown, as it gives you everything for free, every move, ability, so forth, and you get more variety in Pokemon Showdown for the fact that there's random battles, 6v6 battles, and so on and so forth, compared to just double and single battle format. And again, it is so disappointing that there's not 6v6 private lobbies. As you can see right here from PokeAim, a veteran in the competitive Pokemon scene, how can you advertise this game as a way to play how you want to and not let me do 6v6 private lobbies? Come on, Pokemon. Which I completely agree. It is such a lackluster thing that in Champions, there's barely any customizability when it comes to what you can do in private lobbies. So as you can see, if you go to battle and you go to private battles, when you make a room, there's not any customization that you can do. You only can choose single battles, where it's a set of 3 Pokemon, 20 minutes, 7 minutes for your time, and move time is about 45 seconds in mega battle format. And currently, if you hit the plus icon, you're unable to change any of the rules. The only thing that you can look at is just what the rules are themselves. So there's no sandbox variety, which is really disappointing, as Pokemon is a very sandbox variety game, and that's what people always like about this, to where it's an extremely advanced version of rock, paper, scissors. Same with double battles right here. Double battles, only 4 Pokemon, total time 20 minutes, 7 minutes your time, move time 45 seconds. This is all set up in a format to where it is very just competitive, which again is fine to a degree, because of the fact that this is the version of competitive Pokemon. This is designed on how you can be able to enter into tournaments and become the world champion in Pokemon. But even though people like competitive battling and they want to win, not everybody wants to play in single and double battle format and VGC format, as there's still a lot of fun yet competitiveness when it comes to 6v6 private battles, 6v6 random battles, so on and so forth. Now, because this game is a mobile game, what is nice is that in the future I could see updates coming out, because I would think it would be really cool to where, like, for a week-long event, you could do 6v6 random battles as a custom format in this game. And that will be nice, because of the fact that they're going to continuously release updates for this game, because again, it is a mobile game for the Switch and mobile. It's going to make it to where players are going to continue coming back to the game to play it, for the fact that there's fun formats to do. Because way back in the day, random example here, but Halo 5 Guardians, I played that a lot on my Xbox, and one of the things that was a lot of fun about that game is that they would release this game mode called Fiesta, where you get every single weapon in the game, and every time you spawn in, you have a random assortment of weapons, but it was a limited time game mode. So what sucked is that you didn't get it permanently, but it made it to where when the game mode did come out, it was so much fun to look forward to and continue to play. So I could see them doing that in this. And for those of people that want to play 6v6 random battles for free, they can still play Pokemon Showdown. Fingers crossed that nothing bad happens to Showdown, but you get what I mean. And here's a few more things about the terrible launch for Pokemon Champions that are easy fixes that are currently getting worked on as we speak. So the performance issues on Switch 2 is not really there anymore. I think there's just performance issues for the tutorial. For some reason, the tutorial is very laggy, but when you actually do regular battles in Pokemon Champions, it feels fine. It feels really smooth. I did some competitive battling against my youngest brother, and we actually made a video on that, so I'll be coming out soon. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss out on that video. It felt totally fine on my Switch too, so the free update came out, which is really nice. What does suck though is that always online required. It means no more local wireless battles, which is really bad, because of the fact that you're not able to progress at all in Pokemon Champions if you have a bad Wi-Fi connection. Because on the Nintendo Switch, if you played Scarlet and Violet, if you wanted to do local competitive battling, you were able to. You can local connect and you're going to be able to play games no problem. But in this, because online's always required, if you don't have an internet connection locked in, you can't do anything in Pokemon Champions. Take a look at Wolfie VGC. He did his first look at Pokemon Champions, and he was soft locked from playing the game because he had dodgy Wi-Fi in Italy, because he's attending one of his friends' weddings in Italy, and because the location he had didn't have stable Wi-Fi, it made it to where like he couldn't play Pokemon Champions. He couldn't even get past the tutorial, which I think is kind of dumb that we are forced to have an online connection to get through the tutorial for these games. Because again, it makes sense to have an online connection so you can play multiplayer and so on and so forth, but the game is unplayable without an online connection, which might be really bad for a very small group of people when it comes to playing through this game. So it really is silly in my opinion. Rental teams in Champions are pretty useless. They're actually called like retrieval teams, if I'm not mistaken. And how rental teams work is that if you type in a code from somebody that made a team in Pokemon Champions, it will allow you to make that team only if you have the Pokemon available. And when it comes to switching the moves and switching the items, if you don't own the moves or own the items or own the abilities, it will actually take your VP away when building those rental teams. So while it's cool that, like, for example, me as a content creator can build a team, send you guys the code, and you guys can copy and paste my team in Pokemon Champions, if you do not have the Pokemon or VP in order to create it, it will not allow you to create it, which is kind of dumb, because I think with rental teams, what they probably could do is that you do a rental team and you get to use it for like one time in a battle, and then you can't use the code after 24 hours. I think that's how they should do rental teams, to where they can still earn their money, as Pokemon Champions is a business that wants to make money, but still allowing rental teams to exist. So for example, if somebody doesn't have all the materials or VP to do a rental team, they can type in the code and they can use it for one battle in competitive and go from there. And then after you use one rental team for the day, you can't use it for another 24 hours. So you couldn't even switch to a different rental team if you don't have the materials to be able to set it up. I think they could do something like that to really allow people to try out a team to get a feel for it, and without, you know, missing out on potential revenue for the fact that like they want players to, you know, buy currency to be able to play through the game. So we'll see how the rental teams things goes, but as of right now, it's not completely useless, but it's near useless for sure. And then these last 2 points are nothing like anything too crazy. It makes sense that there's a completely different friends list in Pokemon Champions, and that's because of the fact that there is mobile for this game. So they're just trying to get things set up to where there is no like confusion when it comes to Switch and mobile, as both of them are going to collide together. So I don't know why a lot of people are complaining about this. It is a negative fault, yes, but I don't think this is as big of a deal. And besides, if you're trying to build like rooms and stuff like that to play with your friends competitively, you would have to set up a room with a room ID anyway. So you don't really need to add friends in this game. It's not a big deal. And then what does suck though is that there's no single player content at all. So there is tutorial missions that you can go through in these games in order to be able to get Mega Stones and some extra bonus tickets. All you gotta do is spam A through the tutorials. It's not really anything advanced, but it is one of those things where like, yeah, there's no single player content at all. So there's no fun ways to be able to earn free currency in this game as a free to play player. So it's gonna make it to where free to play players that don't have a Switch or don't have, you know, a good team in Pokemon Go, it's gonna be really difficult for people to try Pokemon Champions after they hear, hey, it's a free to play Pokemon game, let me go try it, and they can't do anything at all, which is really unfortunate. So I think there needs to be some single player content in the future, so I'm hoping they do add that. And that's gonna do it for me for the launch of Pokemon Champions. We will be making a follow-up video on some of the glitches that Pokemon Champions has, so make sure to stay tuned to that. Drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.